This is TWiT.
All right. Well, so our first most juicy nugget of hardware, actually, Daniel, you covered. So I'm going to run through the kind of the high level details, and then you give us more of the color around it. But sure enough, it is 2022, and yet Google is still playing the unannounced product left behind in a bar game. Which you got to question whether or not it's real or not. But apparently the upcoming Pixel Watch, the new Pixel Watch from Google that we're expecting to be announced at Google I/O or sometime this year, was lost and found in a U.S. restaurant. Thanks to photos sent to Android Central. It confirms many of the previous design links. There was a Reddit AMA with the finder of the watch, which just cracks me up, that revealed the watch was left at the restaurant, quote, for a few weeks, expecting that people that left it to return, but that never happened. Seems to reveal that the bands will be proprietary on the watch, and the finder tried to boot up the device, but nothing happened beyond the G logo. It's about a half-inch thick, which is the same as the Samsung Galaxy Watch, and the finder said it is, quote, Apple-level quality. So Daniel, I don't know if
Apple.
Yeah, Daniel, I don't know if I missed any key details with that, but what do you think? Is this legit? Was it left behind on purpose? What do you think?
Yeah, that's the question, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll give you some inside baseball, right? I ran Android Central for 5 years. So the first thing that I did was message the new EIC there, Jeremy Johnson, who received this and asked him, like, is this legit? Did this actually happen? And from what he can tell, and now that we have the person TagTech414 on Reddit backing it up, it does appear like it was left at a restaurant, and that the person
weeks.
who works there waited on it for somebody to pick it up, and then reached out to his techie friend, this guy on Reddit, who, when nobody picked it up, would inevitably want to share a bit of information about it. Now, I love a good story, so I have to believe this is true. I want so badly to believe that this is true. And the reason he had to take the photos of the band separately from the watch is that when he picked up the watch, didn't pick up the bands at the same time because they were part of a separate, I don't know, like that whole yarn, right? I'm falling for it, hook, line, and sinker. But I will say, right, this does look like a legitimate leak. There's no charger in the box, so one can assume that the reason it's not working may not be that it doesn't have an OS on it, but that the battery died. Now, they were able to boot it up before the battery died, but it didn't get further than the boot screen. Here at AP, we were thinking of, let's reach out to this guy. Let's help him. Is it going to charge on a Pixel stand? Is it going to charge on the back of a Pixel 6 using a reverse wireless charging? This guy apparently has not been able to get it to boot or to charge. And, it's interesting because this thing looks gorgeous. It looks like a really nicely made stainless steel watch, 40 millimeter face. They estimate about 30 millimeters of that is the OLED display. So significant bezels, but if you use a Galaxy Watch, you know that there are bezels on that, and that if you have the Classic, they use the rotating dial on it to cover up the bezel around the OLED, so it doesn't look like it has any, but it does. So, I think Google is working with some decent hardware here, and that rotating crown leads me to believe that they're really taking input seriously here, which I'm excited about. And if they're taking any of the best bits from Fitbit, they're going to integrate some of the sensors that make Fitbit's hardware excellent. I mean, Fitbit's software is garbage, but if they're really making a show at fitness, automatic fitness tracking and integrating it into Google Fit or whatever ends up becoming this conglomeration of Fitbit and Google Fit, I have high hopes that this will be an Apple Watch competitor from a fitness perspective, which the Galaxy Watch 4 is certainly not, because the Galaxy Watch 4 is a great smartwatch. It's not a great fitness tracker.
That side-by-side photo that you just showed, Burke, wow, that thing looks small. I mean, that's good. That's going to fit on a whole lot of different wrists. One thing that I was wondering about from the leaks was like how, like the thickness of it, like it looks really tiny. So hearing that it's the same thickness-ish as the Galaxy Watch 4 gives me some hope as far as like battery performance, because that was kind of my question. Is like, okay, if this thing really is as flat as some of the leaks make it out to be, like, how are you going to get any sort of duration out of this thing? You know, you need a battery in there in order to power it, and smartwatches don't necessarily perform as well as like fitness watches, you know, on the smaller form factors. So, but I'm curious. Like this, it looks like the design language of it. It's very sharp. Like it's very. I don't know. It doesn't. I guess what I see often in smartwatches is that it looks like a wearable made by a technology company and not like a watch made by a watch company. And this kind of veers closer to that kind of watch made by a watch company look. It looks like a watch face. It doesn't look like a piece of technology as much as a watch. So that's good.
On the other hand, I would say, you know, Fossil is one of the only Wear OS makers these days, and it owns every brand you could think of, right? And I love the Scoggin versions of its Fossil Gen whatever iteration. So I have the new Scoggin Falster Gen 3. It's built on the Fossil Gen 6 platform, which runs the fastest Qualcomm Wear chip you know available today. It runs the latest version of Wear OS that's not a Galaxy Watch 4, right? So it's the best Wear OS experience that you can get outside of the Galaxy Watch, which is still like hews pretty close to the Tizen-like experience. You know, it doesn't emphasize Google services in a way that a traditional Wear OS watch does. And what I think about that is that the hardware is great and the software is terrible. And I've been waiting for Google to marry hardware and software on a Pixel Watch the way that they do on a Pixel phone. And, you know, if this runs Tensor, which it probably does, because we've heard stories about how they can scale Tensor to be, you know, to be a really low power SoC that can do what it needs to do on a smartwatch. I'm hopeful that battery life will be better than it is on today's smart watches that run Wear OS.
Yeah.
Even the larger 46 millimeter Galaxy Watch 4, I find doesn't have great battery life. Like you're looking at 18 hours or so. And my wife, she's got an Apple Watch, the 7th Series 7, that lasts 2.5 days for her easily, right?
Wow.
So
Wow.
I'm hopeful, but I would not be surprised if battery life is the biggest concern that buyers end up having with this thing.
And if this has, so I wasn't aware of the rumors around the Tensor chip being inside. I kind of just assumed, and I don't know why I assumed this, because
Didn't
now
that came up a couple weeks ago, didn't it? I feel
was
like
it that there was a Tensor chip inside, or if it did, it didn't stick, because I've still kind of been in that mindset of like, oh, it's going to be the latest Wear chip, but it makes sense for it to be a Tensor chip. Actually, if Google was, you know, with all the energy that Google put around the Tensor chip in the Pixel 6 and leaning into it, I guess it would be really surprising if Google came out with a watch and was like, well, no, it's not using the Tensor chip. I mean, it wouldn't be a vote of confidence for their chip that they spent all that money and time creating and promoting if they didn't have it in there. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not going to be the same chip, right? But it'll be based on an Exynos architecture, which the Tensor is. I'm guessing it will be a version of what's in the Galaxy Watch 4 with a custom Google coprocessor, which basically is the Tensor, right? It's a high-end Exynos chip from I think a couple of years ago with minor modifications and a Google made coprocessor in there, and it runs great. And I think there's no chance in hell that this will be that the Google Watch will run Qualcomm. I will eat my shoes if it runs a Snapdragon Wear.
Wow.
Chip. I'll do it live on air. I will.
Would it be a juicy nugget shoe, or would it
be a juicy nugget?
Yeah, would it be a moist shoe?
After I eat it, it certainly will.
All right. Well, thankfully, you're not going to have to do that, because I think you're right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense that it would not have that in it. And it doesn't seem like, more and more, it seems like we're probably not going to have to wait too much longer to find out at least some information about this. Like, I don't know if this is like Google I/O. Here's the new watch. You can buy it now, but maybe they mention it. Maybe they tease it.
It depends because as we've seen, Google is never predictable with that. It's like they're rolling out hardware at I/O. No, they do it at that October event. No, that October event's got nothing. It's at I/O. Like I feel like there's not enough consistency year over year. Yeah. Where like if the product is ready and they're ready to go, like I would not be like if we're gonna see the Pixel 6a at I/O. I'm fully expecting to see the watch and the foldable at I/O. Like, I think that is a eventuality possibility.
Okay, but hear me out. I think so. Sundar Pichai today was Google's Q1 earnings. Said something about how the Pixel 6 is fastest selling Pixel phone ever. Blah blah blah. We're building broad consumer awareness of the brand and making good progress. I'm excited about the products we have coming and look forward to sharing more at Google I/O. That does not sound like software to me. That sounds like hardware.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that's exciting. That's something more to look forward to. Although they're really good at doing that and then making you think you're going to see something. And then what you end up seeing is the Pixel 6a, which we are feeling way more confident of seeing by summertime. Yeah. So that would make a whole lot of sense at Google I/O. And then maybe the watch does end up coming at the hardware event later in the year,
in October,
and they do what they did with the Pixel 6 last year and the year before of like the super advanced kind of like, all right, here it is in the summertime, and then they've got months leading up to it. Who the heck knows?
Like the get ahead of the leaks announcement.
Exactly.
Seems to be we're going to put it in a box in the window of a store and let people look at it and that sort of thing. Yeah. That said, going back to this watch, I'm if this is indeed the watch, I'm baffled that someone lost it and didn't go back to get it.
I think that's an important thing to circle back on, Ron. Like, once again, like even with the Apple, like I can't remember the outcome of the Apple, the lost iPhone story, whether that was, true, like believed to be an accident, or if it was like, okay, that was just really smart marketing
thing or whatever. Yeah.
I mean, it's how do you have in your possession something like that is so top secret, and then you leave it somewhere and you never go back for it? I don't understand.
You never go back for it, and then you still have a job, and then like it's just like all those things just seem bad. Like, oh, I don't know, I lost it. Who knows where I could have lost it?
Anyways, no one's going to publish that in an Android blog.
Like, and Lord knows everybody. Daniel, I'm much like you. I want to believe. I like the crazy stories. I like all this sort of stuff. But it's like, I don't know. This just seems not that I don't believe that. Like this definitely checks a lot of the boxes that we've discussed and that we're looking in terms of the leaks around the watch. But this whole thing just seems just bizarre. It just seems weird.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think there's a difference between the way Apple responded to the iPhone 4 leak, which was Steve Jobs called up the editor of Gizmodo and was like, "Give me my phone back."
Yes, right. And like, okay, that's right. Now, thank you for the reminder. That's how that went down.
And this, which is an engineering sample of a smartwatch, which is already leaked like a lot. The thing that baffles me is that the person didn't go back for it.
Yes.
It's not like they didn't realize they lost it. Inevitably they did. So either they were instructed not to go back for it because for whatever reason, right? Whether they knew that it was going to leak and they just said, let it be, or they didn't want to, they didn't want to have to face up to it, or I that part I can't understand. Whether Google PR just wanted to shut the whole thing down and potentially hope that nobody reported it. That part is very strange. Or that person was just reprimanded and fired, and they were like, all right, well,
and moving on.
Then we're just going to let it be.
It's so strange. Strange.
I mean, advanced teasing of their products has worked out well for Google. So, at this point, it could be seen as like, all right, well, then if that happened, it happened. What is our playbook if it does start to hit the press? So who knows? Maybe tomorrow we'll start seeing the Google like, well, you've seen a little. Now it's time to see more. Here's our official reveal ahead of Google I/O when you're going to hear more. Who the heck knows? Who knows?